you have green ground cover 100% of the time?
That's right. So constantly planting, filling gaps, and yeah, we're getting pretty close to 100% of the time.
The Biological Farming Roundtable podcast helps farmers explore innovative, low-input, regenerative and profitable farming systems. The Biological Farming Roundtable is sponsored by Nutrisoil, an award-winning biological liquid fertiliser made from a big worm farm. Nutrisoil's purpose is to empower farmers to produce life-enriching food. My name is Nicola Maddock. I work at Nutrisoil. I envisage a future where farmers are rewarded for producing nutrient-rich foods and consumers have this easily available to them.
Today I have an interview that will keep you hanging on every word. Nick and Lucy Kelly, who farm a 2,000-hectare cereal and livestock farm in Newdegate, WA, tell their story of transition from conventional to a holistic regenerative farming system. It's the real story of forbearance, failing gracefully, the power of support, persistence, excitement and success. When Nick presents at soil health conferences, he often chooses to open with this line: "On the outside, everything is fine, but deep down, inside my boot, my sock is slipping off." And on his Twitter page, "I pray you choose the path of a pioneer. Leave the crowd behind. Be different. I hope you buck the broken system and rock the proverbial boat. May your commitment to the cause make the complacent nervous. Here is the hope for agriculture, human health and our planet. Nick and Lucy Kelly."
Our farm was cleared from virgin bush in 1965 by my parents, and was very much a conventional enterprise. These days we're a holistic regenerative farm, and very much a cereal and legume and livestock enterprise.
When did you change your management of the system? You were saying it was conventional?
We were year in, year out for many years, so set stocking of sheep and cropping. And around 20 years ago, we got rid of all of the sheep and we went total cropping. That was a full chemical knife point system. And that's where I guess we began to run into some issues, realising now that they were all soil constraint issues, soil health problems. We made some more subtle changes probably around 10 years ago, and then 5 to 6 years ago we made a really dramatic change in our enterprise.
Lucy, what was it like in those changeover times? Were you involved in that I guess the last sort of 6-year drastic changeover?
Yeah, Nick and I were married in 2012, and so I've always kind of known Nick when he was experimenting with millet and other species of plants, and I just liked the way he farmed, and I liked the fact that he was thinking outside the box. I don't really come from a farming background myself, so it was all new to me anyway. My grandfather was a sheep farmer, so I suppose I was a little bit aware of what farmers did, but not to this extent. And so, yeah, just looking at the way we do things differently, I think it was exciting for me. And the fact that Nick's a pioneer and a forerunner, I suppose I, was encouraging that and going, we need to do more. And yeah, I just think it's really an exciting space.
So out of the family, it sounds like these changes happened a long time ago slowly. Who was the first one to see that things needed to change? How was it, your dad, Nick, or yourself?
I was probably the main instigator, and that's because I was the one spending all of the hours on the boom spray. It was, warfare against weeds and
culture of death.
Yeah, and just doing the same thing over and over and seeing situations get worse and realising that we needed to do something differently and that there had to be a better way. And I need to acknowledge my parents, because they got behind the decision
Absolutely
that I'd made to change. They've been behind it ever since. They've been really supportive in it as well, which really helps.
Yeah, you've got a lot of support. So you've got your parents and you've got Lucy both sort of really encouraging that change.
Yeah, that's right. And it certainly does help to have that support when you undertake such a radical change.
Yeah. The first time I heard of you both, there'd been a workshop with Christine Jones, maybe 5 years ago or 6 years ago, a soils ecologist. It was in WA. And one of Christine's soil health principles that she advocates is to maintain green ground cover for as much of the year as possible, including summer. And this is a fairly big practice change for your farming area or for any farming area really in Australia to have green ground cover over summer. I heard that there was some strong resistance, as you would expect, to even the idea that it could work. But at that time, you were actually doing it and you were able to stand up and show people that you were doing it. How was this received from others when you were making these early changes?
Some of those forums that I was sharing this in were great because there was a lot of support, but there were also some others where there was a lot of backlash. So yeah, it's certainly challenging when you change something or implement something so radical in an area where it's not the standard practice or where there's a lot of belief that it's not possible. So mixed reactions, certainly.
So tell us about the changes you implemented.
We started by looking for plants that would grow in our summers. That was where white French millet came into the mix. That was actually suggested to us by Rick Bieber years and years ago. In Montfort, Western Australia No-Till Farmers Association bought him out, and I asked him what he recommended. So that was where I started, and we've tried lots of different varieties, lots of different species of things to grow in summer. But that's one that has been a great pioneer species for us. It's really drought tolerant and hardy, and I guess it's enabled us to start repairing soil to grow carbon and to increase our water holding capacity and build on a platform. So yeah, I mean, we've tried lots of things that haven't been quite as successful, but that's been a really good one to kickstart us. So that was one of the first things. And I often say to people, it's the plants are the tools in a transition like this. And one of the hard parts is finding what suits your area. If it's not common practice, that's where the kind of hard work starts, is finding what the tools are for your certain area. And they do change depending on climate and rainfall. So that was the first part of the transition. And we didn't realise where we would end up when we started doing that. But over the years, we've seen some radical transformation.
So straight after harvest, you're sowing the millet?
That's right. So these days, everything is sown to a summer cover crop. Some of our summer cover crops or cash crops are sown in spring. So if we expect to harvest a summer crop, then it would be sown in spring, and then everything else is sown at harvest time. And that's really just for soil health, for soil cover. So that air seeder is hot on the tail of the harvesters every year.
How much of your farm is cropping and how much is grazing?
We at the moment we're back to about half cropping and half grazing, and that is changing all the time as this system develops. But every hectare is sown, so pasture or grazing is always multi-species cover crops. So there's nothing left to chance. We're always filling gaps.
So you have green ground cover 100% of the time.
That's right. So constantly planting, filling gaps, and we're getting pretty close to 100% of the time.
I have seen your covers on Twitter in the very dry times, and they're very green. Tell us about your use of the self-regenerating French white millet. How do you find the planting opportunity in a dry autumn after having the millet go full term and then set seed? Do you have any problems with the setting seed?
This is where I guess there's, in a transition like this, there's always some compromises and there's always some pain to be experienced. And of course, if we have a robust millet plant using moisture all summer, and then we have a really dry start to the season, then sure, we might expect to have a bit of a moisture deficit at the beginning of the year. But the trade-off by letting that millet crop senesce naturally and go right through to seed set is that I can remove that herbicide and I can start sowing. So we're planting green these days. So our winter crop is all planted green. So it's planted into varying stages of senescing summer crops. And because I've filled all of those gaps, I don't need a knockdown herbicide. I don't need Roundup at all. And I've done away with pre-emergent herbicides as well. So that's the trade-off. And what I understand is that as we let that millet crop grow and do its work, we're also increasing our organic carbon. That's humus and carbon at depth. So we're increasing the size of our sponge or our water holding capacity over time. So it's a trade-off I'm willing to make. But I understand that the only way to increase organic matter is to have a living plant. So I'll keep that living plant as long as I can.
Yeah. So you don't spray it out with glyphosate before you sow in your cash crop? Straight in?
Straight in. Because in our climate, it's so well suited to our planting. And our planting of our winter crops is now determined by the senescing of the previous crop. So it's not so much a time, it's not a date, it's not a moisture profile. We're just looking at the previous crop, and as that begins to senesce, we get going, we start seeding.
And is there other species in with the millet?
Generally there is. So quite often there's sunflowers in there, and very often there'll be lupins in there as well. And we've mucked around with cowpeas and lab, and we'll be sowing pumpkins with our next year as well. So generally there's quite a bit of diversity. Yeah.
You said lupins in a summer multi-species.
Yeah, that's right. The reason I'm doing that is because I've had some success with the C3 and C4 tropical legumes like cowpeas and lab. Sometimes in a very hot, dry summer after harvest, I'm not getting the full bang for buck, I don't think, growing some of those things. But what I am seeing is lupins will grow under the shade of the millet canopy, and they still will nodulate. And they're something that I already grow and that I already have lots of. One of the things that I'm conscious of is keeping the cost down. So I'm really keen to grow the things that I already grow, and lupins seem to work nicely.
Where are you finding the seed? Are they from other farmers? Are you finding that you can get them clean and not with any, fungicides on them?
It's certainly a challenge. Yeah, getting seed without fungicide. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So your herbicide usage must have just been cut drastically.
Yeah, it has. It's really, really fallen away now. We're still using some selective in-crop herbicides, so some grass selectives and some broadleaves if I need to. We're pretty keen to get rid of those as well. And we're still using a non-selective herbicide to terminate multi-species cover crops in spring. And at the moment, we're building a 40-foot crimp roller. We've been trialling a short section over the last few years with some success. So we're pretty keen to eliminate that non-selective herbicide as well.
What's the average cost per hectare of your summer covers?
Well, the millet I'm growing and harvesting myself. So the cost of millet seed and lupins that I have on hand, and the rest is some diesel and some depreciation or some wear and tear on the disc seeder. So it's quite a low cost exercise.
What about frost impact? Have you seen any tolerance change in your crops since changing systems?
Yeah, that's been a real standout. Actually, it just seems to us that frost is not really much of a consideration to us anymore. We've got some low-lying sandy country that we used to get hammered every year. We just expected to get frosted, and now I've certainly seen a little impact, but it hasn't really been a concern yield-wise. So yeah, that's been amazing, and we have been comparing crops with our neighbour just across the road, and we saw a couple of years ago some major frost impact in their crops, and he was quite happy to discuss it and to try and work out why. And we had very little damage, so that's been really interesting to see.
Yeah, and any changes in the structure or the colour of your soil visually?
Yeah, we're seeing soil aggregates form and
colour change.
Yeah, colour changing. We're seeing earthworms in abundance now where we didn't see many at all. I have seen 13 worms in one shovel, which was really mind blowing for us. So yeah, lots of changes.
What about your fertiliser use? Do you use fertilisers in your system for the summer covers and the cash crops?
We actually went cold turkey with the phosphate fertiliser around 5 years ago now, and we wound back the N over 2 years. We were using a really kind of a starter rate of just a really low rate, and then went cold turkey on that as well. And
so no nitrogen now?
That's right, no nitrogen for the last 4 years, I think. And we use a compost extract as we were phasing that N out. And when we got rid of the synthetic phosphate, we went to a liquid injection system with a compost extract, and we're using fish and kelp, some humates, and some fulvic acid in that mix as well. So that makes up our fertilizer now, and we use that as a foliar application as well.
Yeah. Was there any big production drops when you dropped things out?
Yeah, there was. It wasn't so bad in the first year. I think we still had enough phosphate and nutrients floating around in the system. In that first year, the system really kind of collapsed in the second year because we didn't have enough active biology to support the system. And then things started to pick up by the third year and have kept picking up since then.
Was it tempting in the second year that you thought, what have I done? Was it tempting to go back?
No, I've never been tempted, but it's certainly not something I would recommend people do. I don't think it's it's a hard transition to make doing it that way. I would recommend people do it in by a third or something like that. Just wind off the synthetic inputs gradually. Certainly. Now that I've done it, I'm happy because we got through that quite quickly. But yeah, there's certainly some pain to go through.
So how long did it take to get this system running viably?
I think by the third year, we were starting to make ground. At the same time, we've been pushing boundaries so radically in the sense of trying to get rid of pre-emergent herbicides. So we've moved quite quickly, which means that we've had to make quite a lot of mistakes, and we've had to learn to fail gracefully in the process. So I think this transition can be easier if you take more time and find your way. But at the same time, we were doing things in our area that no one else had done. So we needed to make those mistakes because there was no one to ask. So we really had to bite the bullet and experiment.
So Lucy, what was it like when things weren't going so well? I mean, were you worried? Supportive? What were your thoughts?
There was a couple of times when Nick would come home from crop checks and he'd be really upset. I think it was a canola crop a while back, and because of the lack of synthetic nitrogen, is that right, Nick? Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. And it was it was a lot of a failure. And then we had a wheat crop. Was it last year or a year ago or 2 years ago? I can't remember, but it was really bad as well. And those moments stand out for me and seeing how upset Nick was. And then I'm like, I went and had a check and had a look too. Yeah. And then I realised, oh, my goodness, this is not as good as what I'd hoped. But you just kind of have to let that go and just kind of cop it and then go, okay, well, how can we do it better? How can we, what can we do differently next time? And, yeah, so we've just learnt so many lessons, and it has been a rather interesting journey.
But you wouldn't change? Oh, well, you would go more gradually is what Nick was saying, but you wouldn't change where you are in your journey at the moment?
Not at all, no.
So what's the cost of the fertiliser inputs now?
Our foliar application or a liquid injection application is around the $2 to $3 per hectare. And
what about your other costs?
I guess the normal costs of fuel and depreciation for machinery. Herbicide is, we must be down well over 50, 60, maybe 70% now. So our herbicide bill is very, very small now. We are certainly probably planting more, so that air seeder tractor is going more than a conventional system.
Yeah.
But I see that tractor as our boom spray. So rather than killing things, we're just filling gaps, promoting life. At the same time, we're establishing a perennial pasture base over much of our farm as well, and that actually eliminates the need to go back and sow summer annuals at harvest time, because we already have a multi-species summer active perennial base, and with increasing livestock or cattle enterprise, we're pretty keen to establish more perennials in the system as well.
Yeah.
So we're really moving towards that pasture cropping scenario, and we've been trialling that for a number of years, and yeah, that's really exciting.
It is the ultimate, isn't it? If it just comes up for you each summer.
That's right. So we've seen how we can fill the gaps with an annual, and now we're doing it with perennials, and it's even better again because I'm not having to go and plant it every year.
Yeah. So how many years into the perennial trials are you?
We must be about 4 years or a bit over 3 years in with our first perennial paddock. So we established quite a few hectares last year. I think we're up to about another 150 hectares were planted last year. So every year we'll be planting quite a big area to perennial mix as well.
What is
and just the mix at the moment is Gatton panic, Rhodes grass, lucerne. There's some Soteria in some of it, and chicory. And I think that's about it.
Okay.
And so you would spray that out before you sowed the cash crop?
No, we're just using livestock. So we intensively graze. We can send that into dormancy, and then sow straight into that. Yeah, it's really exciting to watch that.
Lucy, do you connect the food on your family's plate to how Nick and you are growing these crops? Like, what's your connection from farming to food?
Yeah, I suppose that's probably what I'm most passionate about, with farming, is what we're actually eating and what we're putting on our crops. And what comes to mind is milling our own grain and making our own bread eventually. That would be something that I would really love to do. And experimenting with Emma or farro. Is it Emma and farro?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Or the spelts and the older varieties.
Yeah, trying the spelts out and just looking at, the gluten in our diet and how, so many people are suffering from gluten intolerance, and just looking at different types of grain really and how that affects our diet. And, I would rather eat something that was biologically grown or regeneratively grown compared to something that was conventionally grown, for sure.
Absolutely. And what about the kids? Do you see them learning about the connection of soil and human and planet health with this farming system? Do you talk to them about it?
Yeah, we do. My eldest son has a fascination with machines and anything that has wheels. So he's very interested in the mechanical side of the farm. But the other day, actually, Nick was doing some seeding, and Jude calls it seeding work, which is, we always call it seeding work now. And he was digging in the dirt and looking for the seed. And I hadn't seen him do that before. So I was like, oh, wow, he really understands what's going on. And, yeah, we talk a lot about it. We talk about the green. When we were living out closer to the farm, we could see the green from our kitchen window. We would always talk about, what Dad's doing, and we've got green cover, and Jude would point and say, oh, look, there's green on our farm, and would understand that there wasn't green on other people's farms. So that was really cool. And the other little boy, my youngest child, he's a bit too young to understand, I think, what's going on, but he loves it all the same. He loves driving on the tractor too.
Does your family have like an ethos or a purpose that you're trying to keep on the path toward that you could summarise?
We're certainly heading towards a chemical-free farming, or a chemical-free farm, definitely. And we get the feeling that we're not that far away from it now. We won't compromise with tillage. We won't get to our end goal with tillage. It's not something we're prepared to do, but we're seeing that by filling all of the gaps and replicating natural systems, that it's certainly possible with what we're doing. And so, yeah, I mean, we've thrown the organic word around a lot. Recently, we've had some organic growers, livestock producers from down in the southwest come and corner us and say, we want your product, so you need to go organic. And it's certainly something that we're considering because we're so close to that anyway. So, yeah, it's a really exciting time. I guess things are starting to move quickly now.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the roadmap ahead for the future of this regenerative farming family?
I guess it all comes back to the soil and just making sure every decision we make is enhancing soil health. Yeah, growing sequestering carbon, looking after the soil and knowing that it will look after us if we treat it right.
If there's one piece of advice, I think I'd like to hear from both of you. What would you give to a farmer who already knows that there has to be another way, the system's not working for them? What would their first step be?
Well, the thing that comes to mind for me is the Pantene ad, which it says it won't happen overnight, but it will happen, and that it takes time. And you've got to be patient, and you've got to definitely have forbearance and just encourage each other in the journey, and you will see results.
I like that, Liz.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't have any references to Pantene ads, but yeah, I think persistence is certainly something that I would encourage, but also just getting a real handle on the basic principles of regenerative soil health, those of total cover and something growing all year round, zero soil disturbance and diversity, and then working out how best to implement that in your own operation. I think that's a great starting point.
Oh, thank you both, Nick and Lucy. This farming operation really is, it just all comes together, doesn't it? It ticks off every box of low input, good profit, nutritious food, and good for the climate.
Yep. They're certainly keeping us, excited and interested in what we're doing as we're seeing the changes before our eyes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's hope we catch up again soon in some regenerative farming space. Thanks for chatting.
Thanks very much, Nicola.
Yeah, thank you, Nicola.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Please follow the Biological Farming Roundtable podcast. Share it with your friends and networks. I'm Nicola Maddock and I work at Nutrisoil, a liquid biological fertiliser made from a big worm farm whose purpose is to empower farmers to produce life-enriching food.